Good morning, Dr. Strawn, and thank you for that warm welcome. Good morning to all of you, beautiful, handsome. Did y'all wake up looking like this morning? As Dr. Strawn indicated, I am a parent of one living child. I lost my only son, a few years ago in a traffic accident in the States, and his memory lives on. So whenever I get a chance to share with young persons, and of course and bread of the Bahamas or wherever I go, I do it on his behalf because this is something that he really would have wanted me to do. I had a very busy schedule. I was in session in Nassau last night, having to take Western Air's flight into Nassau. A 30-minute flight lasted an hour and 30 minutes because we had to go with some issues at the airport. So while around the Long Island, felt like we went to Inagua and back before we landed. And of course, this morning here, I would not have missed this opportunity. I do have a funeral at 10 o'clock, and then I have a 1 o'clock flight back to Nassau to speak at an Engineering Society meeting tonight. So as you can tell, this UB student has been very busy. And I hope that my movement would have been making a positive difference in the development of the country. Once again, good morning. And I want to begin by thanking this university, particularly the president and, of course, my fellow alumnus, Dr. Strawn, and the wider UB community for hosting this very, very important conference. And I would like to say I will stand on protocol that was not established. So in our minds, we will establish protocol and recognize all you fine ladies and gentlemen. The university, I should add, is cornerstone of the Commonwealth and plays a salient role in the economic, social, and environmental development of our nation. I note without fear of contradiction that some of the most brilliant minds and ideas in this nation and those who are formulating policies came from persons who were once students of this renowned institution, and I'm not going to call my own name. Perhaps you may be aware, and while I'm not one, I said, who will relish in self-aggrandizement with honor and pride, I note my accomplishment as a student at UB, where some of my views on topical issues were developed and contributed to my ministerial assignment. So the foundation was laid at the College of the Bahamas. Thank you. As a policymaker, I am mindful that policies are generated from ideas, and after several iterations through consultation, policies are implemented to, among other things, improve the livelihood of a nation's citizenry. The University of the Bahamas, from my perspective, is a vanguard for many who desire leadership roles in building a better Bahamas. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important that we, as Bahamians, know what Dorian was, and notwithstanding my previous remarks on the devastation caused by this storm, which is now recorded as historic, I am of the view that repetitious commentaries on Dorian's destruction will remain relevant after the island and Keys were impacted by this hurricane have returned to normalcy. Hurricane Dorian was no ordinary storm. Considering its passage over the northern island of the Bahamas with maximum sustained winds of 180 miles per hour. It is also worth noting that Dorian had wind gusts of 200, and I would say exceeding 220 miles per hour, and storm surge in excess of 20 feet. Comparatively, this storm was equivalent to the 1935 Labor Day hurricane, which caused major damages to Florida Keys and subsequently to mainland Florida, and is recorded as the strongest storm to make land contact in the Atlantic. And I am proof that the storm surge is in excess of 20 feet, having lost a property that my family built on the south side of Waterkey on the North Shore. We had a fishing lodge there, our investment, and one day I was there, and after the hurricane, I was going home to my assessment, and as I got closer to the property, I said, okay, maybe some trees fell over and it's covering the building up. As the boat got closer, I was like, well, those trees look kind of low. Lo and behold, when we got to the property, the only thing Dorian did was cleaned it perfectly. There was no sign of the building, completely washed away. So in the wake of that loss, I still must focus on my national assignment. As a result of Dorian's destruction, more than 70 lives were lost, and many still remain missing today. And thank you for acknowledging that, Dr. Strong. Moreover, the economic impact from Dorian was startling, as losses and damages exceeded more than $3.4 billion. In summary, Dorian is recorded as the worst natural disaster in this country's history. As a Grand Bahamian, I note that my juvenile years were spent on the same water key, and it was on this key that I came to understand that Bahamians are indeed a resilient people. For in the wake of challenges and what appears to be hopelessness, this group of people that we regard as having a tenacity for hard work and creativity always rise to the occasion when faced with crisis situations. In the aftermath of Hurricane Dorian, the Prime Minister knew right away that no small island developing nation could respond considering institutional capacity challenges efficiently to the magnitude of Dorian's destruction. Hence, he welcomed support from the international community, assistance from partnering government, NGOs, multilateral organizations, businesses, and individuals added much value in expediting a response to the crisis of Dorian. There is no secret to the bureaucracy that exists in government, and considering the necessity of restoring in the quickest possible time normalcy to the island and keys affected by Dorian, the Prime Minister, subsequent to consultation with cabinet colleagues, created a ministry with responsibility for disaster preparedness management and reconstruction. My ministry, in essence, is a tripartite entity comprising the Ministry, National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, and the Disaster Recovery Authority, or DRA. Holistically, the three entities have one common goal, and that is effective coordination in addressing ex-ante and ex-post activities so as to mitigate and quickly restore normalcy from the impact of a natural hazard to the livelihood of the Bahamian people. Notwithstanding this objective, each entity has a separate role with respect to preparing, recovery, and reconstruction in the event of a disaster. The ministry, I note, is the policy-making entity in the arrangement and have oversight of the operations of NEMA and the authority. As for NEMA, this department will continue to operate as a government agency with responsibility inclusive of planning and undertaking relief and recovery activities, Recovery 1. The authority is, on the other hand, a quasi-government entity that is governed by a board of directors. However, a managing director is assuming the day-to-day operation of that entity. With the creation of the ministry and the authority, while the creation of the ministry and the authority is regarded, from my perspective, as visionary, NEMA, the one that we do first, in my view, requires a paradigm shift, considering a penchant to deploy human resources and assets to areas that are vital in effecting preparation and mitigation. And as you know, we are already in the hurricane season. In this view, and for the way forward, NEMA cannot be viewed as a centralized agency, as my ministry intends to create an environment of decentralization. Offices for NEMA will be strategically located throughout the Bahamas. However, in the first instance, NEMA will be re-established in Grand Bahama, established in Abaco, and on various islands in the central and southern Bahamas. I wish to emphasize the service provided in each office will be consistent, and if a deficiency exists in one office, through the application of technology, thank God for technology, any request that cannot be addressed in one office will be expeditiously addressed with support from other NEMA sites. In addition to establishing offices in strategic locations, warehouses will be built, and where necessary, these arrangements will be entered into facilities that complies with certain standards. These facilities will be used for stocking of basic necessities and equipment for distribution in advance or in the immediate aftermath of a natural disaster. The brick and mortar issues with respect to enhancing NEMA's efficiency can be addressed rather quickly. However, technical issues that encompasses the development of a strategic plan and recruiting staff with professional background relevant to the execution of NEMA's responsibility will require assistance from local and international institutions. About 2 weeks ago, professors from the University of the West Indies convened a 2-day workshop comprising technical officers from government agencies, civil society, and the private sector in Nassau. The workshop objective was centered on gaining information from participants on thematic topics deemed appropriate for transforming NEMA into an organization renowned for executing its responsibilities in accordance with international best practices. The ministry is expected to receive eminently from UE professors a draft report summarizing what transpired at the workshop and providing guidance on the next step. And I was reassured by Dr. Sean Desnar that we'll be getting a similar document coming out of this session. As time is of the essence, and considering a strong desire to institutionally transform NEMA, I am hopeful that some recommendation and after consultation with relevant government institutions, including DUB, you know how they say DU in Miami, so I'm going to start saying DUB, some aspects of a proposed plan could be implemented within the next 8 weeks. It is also worth noting that in collaboration with NEMA and the authority, the ministry will have oversight for the planning of a disaster preparedness week. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position to provide much information on this event at this time. This planning is ongoing. However, I can say that USAID is expected to provide support in planning the event, and note also that a hurricane simulation exercise will be executed on each island, and that's important. We have fire drills, hardly ever happen, thank God. We have aircraft drills. In the perfect scenario at the airport where it will never happen, but we are in Hurricane Alley and we never have hurricane drill, we never have hurricane simulation. And as fate would have it, during my first presentation in Parliament, I said that I would petition my government, and that was almost 3 years ago. So I guess, according to the Bible, like Jeremiah, I knew the plans I had for you before you was born, so it fell right into my lap. I would have noted in previous remarks that the authority, in the context of recognizing disaster zone, is the center of activities in the tripartite arrangement. The authority's responsibility encompasses the management of reconstruction and, to a certain degree, recovery in disaster-designated zones. While direct oversight for the entity is vested in the chairman and 12 board members, as I stated earlier, there is a day-to-day managing director's responsibility for oversight. I am aware of ongoing discussions with members of the authority to address in the quickest possible time infrastructure work that are deemed vitally important to the operation of other government agencies. Further, and I believe most of you, if not all of you, are aware of the exercise that the authority is currently undertaking on the island of Grand Bahama and Abaco to provide financial assistance to homeowners whose place of abode incurred varying degree of damages. Residents whose homes were assessed with minimum damages are eligible for $2,500 in purchase order or labor. Those with medium damage are eligible for $5,000 in purchase order and or labor. With major damages are eligible for $7,500, and those whose homes were destroyed eligible for $10,000. We know that this will not fix all of the problem, but it will go a long way as terms of helping to alleviate some of the financial burdens that you will be faced with. This program, from my view, is a necessity, as subject to an engineer's report to date. 3,637 households were compromised during the storm. It is my understanding that this initiative is going well. Hence, I encourage all homeowners, and if you know of any who have not registered yet, to please sign up with the Disaster Recovery Agency, DRABahamas.org. Or if you do not have access to a computer, you can go to the Office of the Prime Minister, ground floor. We have data entry clerks that will assist you in putting the information in the computer. You will be notified, and the inspector will come to your residence, assess it, and you will be conducted with respect to the level of assistance the government will be given. The devastation to both Grand Bahama and Abaco were indeed significant, and in some instances will require external assistance to rebuild. As the authority is charged with building in disaster zone, liaising with other government agencies such as the Ministries of Public Works, Education, Labor, and the Ministry with responsibility for immigration, and in Grand Bahama's case, the Grand Bahama Port Authority, and I see we have a representative from the port here, is a requirement considering certain policies and standards that must be adhered to in redevelopment of the disaster zones. In summary, the recruitment of international labor will require approval from the Department of Labor and Immigration, and oversight in rebuilding public facilities and infrastructure will require input from the Ministries of Public Works and Education. And I just want to reinforce that point. We will be seeking international assistance for labor, but not until we would have exhausted all of the local Bahamian labor. Yes, you can give that around. We will ensure that Bahamians are employed first. I can assure you that while there is a desire to expeditiously rebuild a resilient Bahamas, our laws and policies will not be circumvented. However, I am told that wherever necessary, government entities will provide appropriate assistance to the authority in completing its assignments. The law will be adhered to. Dorian wiped out a lot of our homes, a lot of our businesses, infrastructure, but it didn't wipe away our laws. We still must be governed by law and order. And moving forward, to build a more resilient Bahamas, revision, and this is a very important point to me, revision of the building code is an assignment that must be executed. Several weeks subsequent to the passage of the storm, I met and traveled with architects, engineers, and contractors to view the damages on the island of Abaco and Grand Bahama. The result from the professional team assessment was rather stunning, believe it or not, as the majority of homes destroyed by the wind reveal extensive breaches and lack of enforcement to the building code. So it is again pointless for us to fortify or strengthen our building code without enforcing our building code. Enforcement is going to be key to the way forward. These practices cannot continue, and I note that industry practitioners are in support of convening thematic group sessions to review the building code with the aim of recommending, where necessary, new approaches to building in conventional area and introduce more stringent policies when building in coastal or areas prone to flooding. In a meeting with staff from the United States Embassy 2 days ago, I'm delighted to report that assistance will be provided in developing a hazard map. And I'm sure that the Grand Bahama Port Authority and Bahamas Jazz also are generating studies. These hazard or flood maps will no doubt provide valuable information on the topography of land throughout the Bahamas. This is also good news for insurance companies and homeowners, as the hazard maps will also aid in building for resiliency. As a point of interest, and somewhere on the island of Grand Bahama, two homes were built, or two homeowners built their homes in a flood-prone zone right on the coast. One built his home on, in layman terms, stilts, but we call it in architecture and engineering terms, piles. And I assume with the mindset of allowing superstorm surges to flow unabated below his home. The other built his home on a foundation, ground level, a few feet above the ground. Hurricane Dorian, with its powerful flood waters, destroyed the home that was built just a few feet above the ground level. However, the one built on piles of stilt remained fully intact and ready for occupancy. As a policymaker in this country, it is incumbent upon myself and colleagues to ensure that policies are implemented to protect individuals and their assets from the devastation of natural hazards. In the aftermath of the storm, I would be remiss if I failed in alluding to some success stories. There were challenges in the first instance, but the staff from local government and private sector agencies should be lauded in restoring utilities such as water, electricity, and communication services. I wish also to note the removal of debris, a very time-consuming exercise, considering the fact that the contractors had to separate prior to transporting to the site manage the areas that we manage the debris at. I wish also to note the issue of housing And while this subject may not be as prevalent in Grand Bahama, it certainly is a major issue in Abaco. As a temporary measure, recreational vehicles, or RVs, were transported to Abaco to house essential government staff, and as I speak, dome-shaped structures are being completed to house families on the island of Abaco, and some might even be on the way here. The issue of climate change is with us, and while this little nation will comply with international norms to mitigate the impact of climate change, it is our responsibility to embrace adaptive measures. I have no doubt that the frequency of superstorms will increase, and in preparation for these storms, we have to build for resiliency. I note in short order that construction of several schools will begin in East Grand Bahama and on the island of Abaco. These facilities will be built to withstand superstorm and to serve as multi-purpose facility. And when I was growing up as a young boy a few years ago, no mind the prey, Category 1 and Category 2 was the norm. Now Category 4, Category 5 superstorm is now the norm, so we must build with those type of scenarios in mind. The impact of natural hazards can be costly. However, it is incumbent upon us as a nation to adjust building practices, our way of thinking with respect to natural hazards, as observing early warning instructions are merely for the protection of individuals and, of course, animals. In my final remarks, I have no doubt that the University of the Bahamas will play an integral role in the development of policies on building a more resilient Bahamas. Hurricane Dorian has taught us that the status quo with respect to how we plan and build in the natural hazard zone must be subject to a paradigm shift that encapsulates a livelihood within the means of climate change. Climate change is real. I remember again living on the water, growing up on the water. My father, who was a very skilled boat captain, and my uncles, we were able to predict the tidal flow by looking at the moon, looking at the sun. The moon is coming up, or tide is flowing. When the moon is in the middle, it's high. Nowadays, we can't do it. It's difficult. On our way to Waterkey, we could always tell if the tide is high, if it's low, if it's rising, or if it's ebbing. Nowadays, because of climatic change, it's very, very, very difficult. So we have to now rely on modern technology. Things have changed, and we must change with the times. I thank you for this opportunity to provide a brief synopsis on salient issues unfolding in my ministry, and wish you well in your discussions on various thematic issues to positively impact the development of this island. And I will say to you, Dr. Swan, to your team, when I attended every institution that I went to, apparently the name changes. I went to the Waterkey All-Age School that don't exist anymore. I went to Freeport High School, later became Freeport Anglican High School, now it's BMES. I went to College of the Bahamas, where we were College of the Bahamas what? Caribs. Now we're now University of the Bahamas Mingos. So I had my Carib paraphernalia. I never had UB Mingos paraphernalia. So y'all get the message, right? I wear size L. So I expect my paraphernalia. Once again, thank you very much for inviting me, and I hope that you have a most successful session. God bless.